Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and I'm going to explain to you why you have actually never engaged with the social interaction pillar of Dungeons & Dragons of any edition, right? And you've never really actually engaged with the exploration pillar of Dungeons & Dragons in reality, in my humble opinion. All right. So all this is coming out of Strixhaven. Strixhaven is the number one it's the number one least understood book since first edition. The first edition, the PHB, the DMG, and the MM, to this day, are not truly understood for what they actually are, right? But since Gary Gygax threw the gauntlet down, changed our world fundamentally through Unbound Identity and Unbound Immersion, in my humble opinion, Strixhaven is it is just this massive dividing line, and it's dividing people right now. Like, basically, people are like, XP to level 3. Thanks for the correction, somebody in my comments. And Jordan, who, like, Jord fan, just saying those. I read my comments, right? So XP to level 3 was recently saying that he understood, he had to go back and do a new video on Strixhaven and go, oh, I didn't really understand what Strixhaven was. Nobody does. All right, so let's get into this, okay? Here's the issue. We interact right now in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition with combat at a level that no other version of the game has ever interacted with it. It is 700. When you do combat in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition right now, you can forget the D&D dens, you can forget the D&D not dungeon masters. They're playing with games that the combat pillar is decades behind on, right? Like, so they literally don't even have the language to understand what we're talking about right now, because they've been atrophied, right? Their mental muscles are atrophying dealing with 1E and 2E Dungeons & Dragons and copies of 1E and 2E Dungeons & Dragons. The combat pillar we engage with right now is 750 pages across the DMG, the PHB, and the Monster Manual. And for some dungeon masters and players, literally 2,000 or 3,000 pages of combat engagement, right? And combat engagement where, like, what is the damage type? Radiant or slashing or piercing, right? Where is it coming from? Well, it's coming from a subclass that has these feats involved, right? And this creature, does it have immunities or vulnerabilities to this damage type? Does movement matter for how much damage is being done, right? Attacks of opportunity. There is massive complexity just within the current edition, and that edition is informed, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, is informed by 4 other editions. It is the greatest combat engagement that has ever existed in any version of any tabletop role-playing game ever, right? And it is bespoke and complex, right? All right, now, when we look at the social interaction, right? It's like 3 skills, right? It's insight, persuasion, and intimidation. Those are the 3 social skills in in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. And the other editions were even worse, right? So I have a great commenter, the Gibson, and he recently said, hey, Scott, I don't need Strixhaven to do social interaction, right? Now, he's a brilliant dungeon master. He has experience in, I think, every single Dungeons & Dragons version, right? Very, very smart person. I totally did. And he thinks that he's doing social interaction in his game. He's not, right? Here's what's happening, right? There isn't 750 pages of social interaction informed by 4 other editions when it comes to social interaction. There is, social interaction is 2 people talking, so we're just going to flap our gums and whatever we decide is going to happen, right? And maybe I'll throw in an intimidation roll, maybe I'll throw in a persuasion roll, maybe I'll throw in an insight roll, right? And it's just so immature and not complex and not built out from 47 years of taking the pillar seriously, which we have massively taken the combat pillar seriously. Okay, when I was 10 years old, right, in Racine, Wisconsin, I jumped over a creek in the middle of a summer, right? So we're like 6 weeks out in the summer, and like 15 of my buddies got together, right? There's like everybody I caught crawdads with, right? Like 15 kids all get together. We put this ramp up, and I had a GT, I think it was a GT Flex, right? It was a GT BMX bike. It was chrome, and gorgeous bike, and it had these yellow plastic non-spoke like rims, right? So what I did was I went 100 feet out, in the street, rode straight at this like very sturdy ramp that we had built, right? Hit the ramp, and what happened was, it was at the corner of a street, right? And so basically I would hit the ramp at the edge of this person's property, and they had a creek. They had a small creek, like a water runoff in their area, in a ditch on their property, right? And basically I flew 10 feet, right, over this recessed little valley in their yard, right? And at my height, I went 3 feet over the ground, right? And then went 10 feet. I went 3 feet vertical, 10 feet horizontal, hit the other side, and I landed it. I actually didn't fall off my bike, right? And, and everybody was screaming and super excited. And I had went 8 feet above the lowest point, above the creek, right? Which was recessed, right? And I was like, and I jumped off. I threw my bike on the ground, and I was like, I flew, right? And and because there were wings on the GT had wings on the side, and I was like, and I literally remember flapping my arms, jumping off the bike because I was happy I was alive, right? Now, 3 months later, my family, we got in an airplane and flew from Racine, Wisconsin, back to see our family in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, right? And when we did that, we actually flew, right? Like, so right now, you have never, ever engaged with social interaction or with exploration pillars of the game. Strixhaven is the first game to introduce high mechanical complexity through hierarchy and through actual mechanics on how social interaction works in Dungeons and Dragons, right? So the reality is, I understand, the Gibson, he's saying, hey, I've done social interaction a lot, and what he's doing, he's looking, right and left to his buddies and going, look, we're flying, right? And he's jumping over a creek. But the reality is, we have not even remotely touched the actual, like, here, a buddy of mine explained, right? This one of the wisest things I ever heard. He goes, we were talking about leadership, and he was a leader, right? A business leader. And he said, you lead from authority or you lead from influence, right? Some people lead from both, but it's incredibly rare. You're given the authority to lead, or no one gave you any authority to lead, and you lead because you influence people, right? When a noble starts talking to a commoner, right, and the commoner has influence leadership, what are the mechanics behind it? We have no clue. We have 750 pages of high complexity on combat and 47 years of lessons. But the reality is, we haven't even scratched the surface on social interaction, right? Only now with Strixhaven is, we have mechanics for love, right? Like, this is the first time ever we've taken the human condition of love and say, let's put dice behind this, right? So, Gibson, I know you're super intelligent. I know you're a very talented dungeon master. But you and every other dungeon master out there has never even touched social interaction pillar in Dungeons & Dragons, and certainly not the exploration. There's just not enough. We've never taken these pillars seriously. And Strixhaven opens the door, and we see this grand hall, right? We've all been huddled in a broom closet, right? And pretending that we were in the Grand Hall. We're going into the Grand Hall now. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.